Have you ever played Portal before? It just so happens to be my favorite game of all time. But it wasn't always my favorite game of all time. For the longest time, I've said that Destiny was my favorite game of all time. Not this, but this. Destiny 1. Year 3 to be exact. Recently though, I found myself in that typical gaming fatigue that a lot of gamers can find themselves in nowadays. You know, a million games. Unlimited games. So many games, yet nothing I want to play. I decided that I've never really been one to go achievement hunting before, and I've always kind of wanted to try it. So I went and reinstalled one of my favorite games from my childhood, Portal. As I was going through unlocking all the achievements that I hadn't already unlocked through my original playtime, I thought something to myself, wow, this game is so much fun, and I'm not getting constantly driven up the wall like how I do when I'm playing Destiny. However, I eventually made my way over to Portal 2, and while I was grabbing those achievements in that game, I had another thought. I think I like Portal 10 times more than Destiny, but I also think that I really only like Portal 2 9 times more than Destiny. Here's why. Now, normally when it comes to story games, I find myself getting disengaged pretty easily. This isn't to say that story games are boring or anything, but I prefer a payoff in games that rewards more gameplay mechanics and more things to do rather than major story beats. Games like Life is Strange or Telltale's The Walking Dead, they're great games, don't get me wrong. However, the payoffs in that game aren't really learning new mechanics, but rather learning new things in the world of the game. In gaming, I want the payoff to feel good. Like progressing through a level I've been struggling with, or unlocking a new mechanic that changes the way I think about the game entirely. There's also a much longer commitment to story games that in the end are really just trying to tell you a whole cohesive story, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to Portal lets you play the game, with the story unfolding and unraveling around you in the universe, achieving both an interesting story while keeping you super engaged in the gameplay. I was talking to a friend about this exact problem I was having, and he had something really interesting to say about it. He said, the story develops around you, and the world reacts to you. This allows you to get as much from it as you want, depending on how much attention you decide to put into it. Now, when it comes to puzzle games, rather than getting disengaged, I more or less just get frustrated. I won't lie, I haven't really played a ton of puzzle games, so my judgment isn't necessarily super fair, but whenever I do play them, it just ends up in frustration. A funny example would be a fan-made game called Portal Revolution. This game builds off all the same mechanics that Portal 1 and 2 had, except it adds one more major mechanic. A third portal, a time travel portal. You can already imagine how confusing and complex the levels can get from here. After clearing about 3 to 4 of the levels, I pretty quickly got stuck and ended up having to rely on YouTube for help. This is something that kept happening after that level and every level after it, and I ended up just hopping off the game. But this is an issue that I have with most puzzle games. I get frustrated and I struggle. I have to go to YouTube to figure out the solution. I see how simple the solution actually is in hindsight, and then I feel stupid for even having to go to YouTube, while already feeling stupid for not being able to figure out the puzzle. And then the cycle just repeats. Do you see the problem here? Now, like I said, I love Portal, and it's no secret that everybody loves Portal. At least everybody that's played the Portal games. But everything I've seen, every person I've talked to has said that they like the Portal 2 game more than the original. Just take a look at this poll that I ran with a few of my friends in a survey. You could see that there is one vote for Portal 1. That would be me. Big fat ass. All the other votes are for Portal 2. And then there's a few votes that say they haven't played enough to make an accurate decision, which is a different problem in and of itself, but I think literally everybody needs to play Portal to completion. Both games. Just, if you haven't played Portal, please play all the Portal games. And by all the Portal games, there's literally only 2, and you could probably finish them in like 4 or 5 hours. So just do it. What are you doing why are you even watching this video if you haven't played Portal? Both games have an engaging yet very simple and easy to grasp story to follow. There's no cutscenes, very little shocking revelations, just a solid story with rewarding payoffs for the gameplay and in turn the player. They provide puzzles that are challenging and stimulating enough to keep you engaged while not being too complex to get you frustrated and have to go ask a friend or go on YouTube to find the solution. But in the end, Portal 2 just has a deeper and much more complex complex story with much more to it. More puzzles, more mechanics to play with, more characters, a more fleshed out world. In other words, Portal 1 walked so Portal 2 could run. So you may be thinking, Dorian, this is a no-brainer. You just explained why Portal 2 is basically an objectively better game and experience for anybody. So why are you saying that you like Portal 1 better? And to that, I say, I just freaking love Portal 1, man. I love it. Obviously, there's more to it than that. I just love how Portal 1 feels. It feels so responsive, so genuine and contained. You have a portal gun, sometimes a cube, some lasers. Oh, yeah, and turrets. But that's really it. There's no gel, no light bridges, no excursion tunnels, and it works. The game goes and it runs with those mechanics. Let's just go and take a level from around the midpoint of each game and analyze them. In Portal 1, we're going to be taking a look at Chamber 18. This is the second to last stage you play before the escape sequence starts. I found this level to be a great combination of almost every single mechanic available in Portal 1. You start by doing some typical portaling across gaps, and you eventually make your way over to a place where you're going to have to portal on a wall and jump through it. A mechanic that almost feels like it's not even the intended way to solve the puzzle. But when you do solve the puzzle by doing that mechanic, it makes it feel so much more rewarding. Almost like you bested the game, or bested GLaDOS, and did it in your own personalized way. After that trick, you portal your way up across a few other vertical platforms until you're presented with a door that's locked by a button that you need a cube to unlock. Once you walk into the room behind the button, you see a bunch of turrets laid out in a giant room, and behind said turrets is the button you need to open that door. On top of those turrets, there's also high energy pellets. Is that really what they're called? That is what I have written. Basically, those energy balls are used to trigger a bunch of different things, whether it be opening a door, moving a platform, you get it. What I love about this room and section of the puzzle is how many ways there really are to solve it. Personally, when it comes to me, whenever I was faced with this room, I would breeze past all the turrets, get the cube, and speed on out of there without having to deal with any of that. But if you really wanted to, you can use the energy ball you're provided with to strategically take out each and every one of those turrets, so they're not even a variable anymore. Or if you really were feeling a little crazy, you could use the turrets to take out the other turrets by positioning yourself on one end and the turret you want to take out between yourself and another turret to have it shoot out the other turret. I mean, it's a little convoluted, but if you wanted to, you could do that. Anyways, now that you have the cube, you're able to put it on that button and open the door to the final section of the puzzle. In this section, you are again presented with a bunch of vertical platforms with a portable surface on the bottom. There also happens to be a giant gap right when you walk in that has a portable surface at the bottom of it. You are supposed to put the portal at the bottom of the giant hole and a portal on top of one of those vertical platforms to jump down the giant hole and shoot up the vertical platform. After that, you just have to chain a few portals together to maintain that momentum and then make your way up the vertical platforms, eventually making it to the end of the stage. Truly one of the most satisfying levels in both of the Portal games, at least in my opinion. There's tons of different ways to play this level at your own pace, and the best part is every single section feels so satisfying to complete. Like I said, it's a beautiful mesh between basically all the mechanics that you've been given in the Portal game. Oh, there also is a rat den in this level. Rat dens are these little sections sprinkled throughout both Portal 1 and Portal 2, hinting at some of the major plot points within the universe. These rat dens are a great way of fleshing out the universe while still keeping that lonely, isolated feeling that Portal 1 provides. Almost like there's another person watching you, obviously, other than GLaDOS, but you never actually see them. These are expanded upon in Portal 2 and in the Lab Rat comics, but in the game, you never actually see Doug Ratman, the person that's leaving these rat dens, or whatever you'd like to call them. Now moving on to Portal 2, the level I want to discuss in this game isn't really much of a level, but more of a cutscene, if that. You find a way to finally replace GLaDOS with Wheatley, your companion that you've been running around with this whole game. However, it ends up going wrong with Wheatley taking over GLaDOS's body and finding out the true power he now has the capability to use, and he ends up not really wanting you to leave like initially planned.
Actually, why do we have to leave right now? Do you have any idea how good this is?
He likes the control. He wants to use that control on you. Later in the game, he talks about how amazing it is to test and how great it feels, building on the reason behind why GLaDOS was even testing you in the first place, other than the love of science, of course. It's funny, it's interesting, and honestly, it wasn't really a twist that I was fully expecting when I first played through the game. This leads to the rest of the way the game plays. You team up with GLaDOS, who now is a potato on your portal gun, and you end up trying to beat Wheatley and escape. Almost exactly the same plot as Portal 1, just with Wheatley being the villain and GLaDOS now being on your team rather than being against you. But do you notice the difference between these two levels that I've talked about? One of them is a great example of how you can combine all the mechanics in your game to make a super fun and rewarding puzzle. The other one isn't really a puzzle, it's really a cutscene. And I love it, don't get me wrong, but when I was playing Portal 2, there wasn't a particular level that really stuck out to me the way that this section of the game did, at least gameplay wise. Not to say that the puzzles and levels in the game weren't fun or anything, they were, of course. And of course, they built off of all the mechanics that were in Portal 1 and developed the mechanics a lot more to have some more complex and complicated puzzles. But I think when it comes to Portal 2, I more resonated with the story rather than the depth and complexity of the levels. There's a few reasons for this, but I think the main one is just how much Portal 2 built on the initial story and world of Portal 1. Because of this, those major story beats really hit, making me want to know what's happening and why it's happening. What's going to happen to the character that you're playing as, Chell? Is GLaDOS on your team now? Because of this, those major story beats just really hit and stuck with me more than any one individual level could. The levels in Portal 1 just felt so personal. They felt so real. It was you against GLaDOS, this rogue AI supercomputer trying to kill you the whole time. There's no one else, just you and GLaDOS, also Ratman, who you never really see. And as a result, it just feels so real and unsettling, uncanny, in the best possible way. In Portal 2, you're really either talking to Wheatley or GLaDOS and not being insulted by them, but literally talking to them, teaming up with them, looking for their help. You feel like you're part of a team. This takes away from that novel, unsettling feeling that you get in Portal 1 when it's just you against GLaDOS. This is especially evident at the end of the first Portal game, where contrary to the whole Portal 1 game, where GLaDOS is enjoying insulting you, manipulating you, and degrading you, to almost feeling panicked at the prospect that you might actually escape the facility.
What are you doing? Stop it.
Hello? Where are you? I know you're there. I can feel you here.
Okay, the test is over now. You win. Go back to the recovery annex for your case.
She's extremely talkative, very manipulative, making you think what you're doing is wrong, and doing anything she can to keep you in the facility and away from escaping. It makes it so much more satisfying when you do inevitably escape the facility and beat the game, even though you didn't really escape. Initially, when Portal 1 first came out, the ending cutscene is that. You escape, you win, that's it. Along the development of Portal 2, they actually ended up changing this cutscene so that rather than escaping, at the very end of the cutscene, you get dragged back into the facility. Now, I don't really hate this decision per se, although, again, it does kind of change that novel feeling that you get from being against GLaDOS, escaping the facility, besting GLaDOS, and then winning. However, thankfully, it did lead to Portal 2, so I can't really complain all that much. Now let's just pray that maybe Valve can count to 3 for once in their life and make a third Portal game. As you can tell, I genuinely love both of the Portal games, even if I like one slightly better than the second one. I completely understand most people feeling the complete opposite. Like I said, I can kind of understand why Portal 2 is objectively a better game than Portal 1. Although I do think attempting a third iteration of the Portal games might be a huge risk. Not to say that there's a lot of hype in the Portal community per se, but I do know that if a third Portal game was announced, everyone would start losing their shit, including me. And as a result of that, it could be very easy for it to flop with everybody having very high expectations. I will say, I did briefly touch on some of the fan-made Portal games. The one that I mentioned was Portal Revolution, but that's one of many. Two other very popular ones that come to mind are Portal Stories Mel and Portal Reloaded. Portal Stories Mel actually came out in 2015, which looking at it now is 10 years ago, which is insane. And it is an amazing game. It fits right in between Portal 1 and Portal 2 and actually explains why the events of Portal 2 are even happening. Both games are super fun, but let me tell you something, they are ridiculously hard. The games are very, very well made, just extremely difficult. So I wouldn't recommend trying them unless you're really up for the challenge or you're really itching for some more Portal. Anyways, they're a fun experience and definitely worth checking out. That's the end of my little rant why I think Portal 1 is better than Portal 2. It's just my personal opinion. Like I said a million times in this video, I completely understand people thinking the other way around, and please don't freak out. I know this isn't really my typical style of video, and I've never really made something like this before, or I haven't even really posted in like over 2 years, but I wanted to try something new. I'm very passionate about both the Portal games and thought I would just take this time to gab a little bit, if you will. If you like it, let me know. I'll make some more about Portal, more about some other random games. I can literally just talk about anything for hours on end, so just let me know. Thank you for watching.